Here's something you might not know. So when you see the end of a movie and it says written by this one person, it doesn't necessarily mean that that one person wrote the movie. I know that is confusing, but here's an example. So I was on this little Reddit post yesterday for Reddit screenwriting, and somebody was talking about how their first ever film is going to be released on Netflix. They got the sole writing credit for that movie. It was a spec script that they wrote. It came from their brain. The movie says written by this one person. And they said that the movie is approximately 50% of the script that they wrote. So you might be wondering, how does that make any sense? Well, there's a few different scenarios where that could be the case. The first one would be that someone came in who's a much more experienced screenwriter, someone who it's not their first movie, and they could have been paid to do an uncredited rewrite of the script even while they were shooting. There are people who've made their entire careers by being like the go-to writers to punch up scripts, rewriting entire chunks on the day of. And often those people are making such good money that they don't care that their name won't be on the script. Second of all, there's something called the director's pass, which is basically like once the writer's done, the director is able to go in and edit the script. Technically, the director could rewrite the entire script. Usually, that's not going to be the case because the director typically is working with that writer for a reason. But if they wanted to, they could. I'm pretty sure that's like built into the DGA deal. The director gets to do a pass on the script. Now you might be wondering, so why does that writer still get credited as the only person who works on the movie? Well, movies that fall under WGA Writers Guild jurisdiction, there are a lot of protections for screenwriters, and the way that those deals work and the credits work is that everybody knows the script is going to change once the writer turns in the final draft. It's a very complicated process. Sometimes there are arbitrations and huge fights over who gets credit on movies, but for the most part, we acknowledge that the story has been established by the writer. And if this is still like their version of the movie, they're most likely going to get credit. This is why it's really silly to me on Twitter when people will like look up films that have all been written by the same screenwriter, and like they'll pull lines of dialogue and be like, I can't believe this writer wrote this horrible line of dialogue. The truth is, the person whose name's on that movie, they might not have even written the line of dialogue that you're talking about. And whenever I bring this up, people are like, oh, so like we just can't blame the writers for anything? And the truth is, no, not really. The only thing you can critique based off the screenwriter's work is the actual draft that they delivered. And honestly, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I think when you have films that have gone through decades of development, the reason why sometimes certain writers or like certain directors' versions of those scripts leak, I think, is because they leaked it so that people know, hey, here's my version that I worked on that I believed in, because otherwise the final version that may have been just totally trashed, it'll still be attributed to the person who stuck it out through the end, although there are just so many different factors at play. The film industry is incredibly complicated, and the bigger the budget gets, the bigger the problems are.